Hello, this is Dr. Evelyn Hill with Shades in Justice podcast. Hey, we're so excited you decided to stop by. Hey, you can catch us every Wednesday evening, 8:30 Central Standard Time or 9:30 Eastern Time. We want to see you right here at Positive Power Christian Radio. Again, this is Dr. Evelyn Hill with Shades in Justice podcast, a chance where you can hear about justice and injustices here in our country. Again, Dr. Evelyn Hill with Shades in Justice podcast. Hello and welcome to Shades and Justice podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Evelyn Hill. And hey, you can always catch me at www.drevelynhill.net. Hey, do we have a surprise for our listening audience on tonight? We have with us Miss Karla, and I'm going to let her pronounce her last name. And she is with an organization called AIRR, and I'll let her begin to share what AIRR is in just a second. But first, I want to say welcome to you, Karla, and do you mind sharing your last name?
Unmute. My name is Karla Juarez. Juarez, like the city in Mexico. I'm not from there though. And yeah, I work for Advocates for Immigrant Rights and Reconciliation. So we just go by AIRR.
Oh, that's awesome. Advocates for
Immigrant Rights and Reconciliation.
Immigrants' Rights and Reconciliation. That's awesome. We've had a lot of different guests on our show, but this is the first time we've had someone from AIRR or someone who's dealing with the immigrant issues, and to hear your viewpoints, your advocacy, your passion around this issue is phenomenal. And we met in person a couple of weeks ago, and man, I couldn't wait to get you on our show. So, Karla, where were you born? Where were your parents born? And tell us all about the journey from there to U.S.
Yes. I was born in Mexico, not in the city of my last name though, but in the same state. I was born in Chihuahua, Mexico, and we migrated to the U.S. when I was 4 or 5 years old. I think I turned 5 years here, but yeah, I grew up in New Mexico, so that's where I consider my hometown because I grew up there. And yeah, my parents are also from there. My younger sister is also from there. And I have 2 other siblings who are U.S. citizens. I'm a U.S. citizen now, but they were born here.
Okay. So what about your parents?
What about them?
Yes. Were they both in Mexico, and how was their journey to the U.S.?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they grew up in Mexico. They were born in Mexico. They met there. They lived in the same city. And yeah, decided to move to New Mexico one day, apparently. And yeah, so yeah, my parents are now documented. Yes, we're all here. We're good now.
Okay, all right, good. So, what were some of the challenges you faced as a child growing up in the U.S.?
Yeah, I grew up undocumented. Luckily, though, I grew up in New Mexico, which is very different from the political landscape that we see here in Kansas and Missouri, right? Okay. You talk about there are big differences, specifically scholarships for undocumented individuals that with public money. That's not a thing here, and it was in New Mexico. So growing up undocumented, going to high school, I still had the opportunity to get a scholarship, which is like public money. Mm-hmm. The bad thing, though, is that I realized what being undocumented really meant. I knew I was from Mexico. And my story is not unique, right? You hear everybody who grew up undocumented at a point in time where they found out they were undocumented. Um,
Yes.
so for me, it was when I was about 15 years old and my friends were getting jobs at the mall. And that's when I wanted to get a job at the mall too. And that's when I had the conversation with my mom about what it meant to be documented and what a social security number is. So that's when I found out. That was a little bit of a challenge, although I had the opportunity to go to school, higher education as far as a college, I was crushed because I was like, why should I go to school if I can't work? So
Wow.
um that was a big challenge. That was like sad. There was a point where I was like angry with my parents for bringing me to the US with like no
Oh,
future. Although you come here to seek a better future, right?
yes.
I don't know if they ever thought that their oldest daughter wanted to go to college, right? My parents only went to high school. So, yeah, that was one of the challenge. Now, when you compare also like the politics between New Mexico and Kansas and Missouri, um, I was able to get a driver's license as an undocumented person, and undocumented people cannot get licenses either in Kansas or Missouri. So
Oh
I
my.
did not face nearly the challenges that undocumented young people go through here.
Hmm. Wow. And I remember a while back there was a lot of conversation on the news about the DECA program. Do you want to talk about that? Because that afforded uh, youth that were documented to have an opportunity for scholarships in second education, second college education.
Yes, yes. So DACA is actually an acronym for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. So
Mm,
that was granted in June 15th of 2022 by the Obama administration. It wasn't
uh-huh,
because of him. He didn't wake up and say, I should make this. It was undocumented youth pushing for this. So
uh-huh.
the youth won, and it provides uh, it provides an exercise of prosecutorial discretion. It provides temporary relief from deportation. So it's like a 2-year work permit. So this was
Okay.
granted for undocumented young people who had been here. There's a list of requirements on the USCIS website, but I think you had to be here uh, since you were 16 years of old or younger, and
Mhm.
meet other really difficult requirements to be able to be granted that. Um, so I I was in high school between in the 2010s era. So I
Uh-huh.
graduated in 2010.
Mhm.
I was still undocumented at the time, and I didn't really know about DACA. You really had to be, I think it was in the news I heard from people, but I don't remember it. Had I not gone through my process that I did, I would have been eligible for DACA. So,
Wow.
in the DACA, the childhood arrivals for the deferred action for childhood arrivals, it does not provide a path to citizenship. It's just a continuous 2-year um, renewal of your work permit. And we've heard a lot of our community members because of the wait times that USCIS has or the backlog. Sometimes their DACA lapses and they have to not work for a while. So um, it's a relief that has provided young people with a lot of opportunity. I was reading a survey done by United We Dream, which is the leader of the DACA, who pushed DACA, the organization that pushed DACA. I was
Mhm.
reading surveys that a lot of like high percentage, I can't remember the numbers, but the high percentage of DACA recipients own a home, have jobs, have graduated from higher education, have advanced degrees. So we're, people in that fight are still fighting for a path to citizenship for young people. Much of them
Wow.
are in their 30s, like me already, with children.
Oh my. That's
Mhm.
so interesting. So, um, are you saying they have their homes, they have a job, they enjoyed the opportunity of getting a college education, but still do not have their um immigration rights to be here in the country of the United States
Yes.
of America.
Yeah, it just puts
Wow.
a temporary stop on deportation. Normally so I'll explain a little bit of my process. I went through the U visa
Okay.
process, and this is like a humanitarian visa. So you had to be a victim of a violent crime to be able to qualify for something like this. And my
Hmm.
process was we had a 4-year work permit. That's four
Uh-huh.
years, not two, like DACA. 4-year work permit, and then we had to apply to adjust our status. That's when we got our green card, or what it's the formal, they call it permanent resident card.
Hmm.
Um, then I had to have that for 5 years and then apply for citizenship. And all through that, you're going through all these immigration fees. And, you know, DACA recipients pay $495 every 2 years.
Oh my. $495. Wow.
Yes.
Somehow it just doesn't seem fair. You are in the country, you have been working for years, you still don't have your uh, documentation to be a full-fledged citizen, but you've been paying taxes and everything else, right?
Yes. And not to mention the fees they pay, right? To um, be able to renew status all the time, every
Hmm.
2 years.
Wow. Okay. Well, do you mind just sharing some of the challenges your family may have had to face moving to the U.S.?
Yes, I think our whole family as a whole, it was difficult. The language
Yes.
part was the first and foremost thing that was very difficult. I went to school. I remember I was enrolled in elementary school and I didn't speak English, right? I don't remember speaking English as well as I do now. I mean, until
Uh-huh.
I was like in my 20s, right? It takes a while
Wow.
to learn a new language.
Yes.
So yeah, I think the challenge was being able to uh, communicate with others,
Yeah.
government entities, right? Schools.
Hmm.
Um, so I think the most important thing that I want to highlight as far as struggles was the language part.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, and I think, the second is getting acclimated to a new place, new country, different
Hmm.
people um, that speak other languages. So it's that I don't know, I haven't talked to my parents so much as far as their struggles, but what I heard is first the language and just like getting to know what neighborhood you want to move to, um, the school that belongs to you, right? And how to like connect. So I think when they got here, family members were the ones that like were the most helpful.
Okay. That's good. That's good. And um, I always think it's so interesting that um, as we look at what can we do to help individuals in our community, I think one of the greatest things we can do is learn Spanish. So to really be helpful. So I've been in several organizations that was available to help those who were struggling, just trying to find housing and other resources here in Wyandotte County. But because I didn't speak Spanish at all I can do is say "Hola, cómo está?" That's about it. And so it just left me crippled for being able to help someone who that's all they spoke was English. I mean Spanish. There was one young lady I worked with, Raquel Laura, who was part of a church on 18th and Parallel. They are still there. And the young lady's husband had been deported. She was like 7 or 8 months pregnant and had two other small toddlers. And they put all of her stuff out on in the front yard. And she had nowhere to go. She did not have a job, and her husband was gone. So, he was deported. And so we were trying to help her. And we had Raquel, who was able to come over and interpret for her. and us. And then we were able through Raquel to get her an apartment. And so just think how many women are really struggling whose husbands have been deported.
Yes.
That's rough. That wow. And then she was pregnant and everything. From what I understand, now that baby was born just fine, and she and her children did well, and then she eventually got a job. But wow, what a struggle she had to go through. So I am just so impressed with the organization that you work for, AIR. So would you tell us about AIR and some of those goals and objectives in your advocacy work here in Wyandotte County?
Yeah, yeah. So we work mainly in Wyandotte County, but we work across the metro. We have three programs that we focus on. The first is the Know Your Rights. So we have trainings for individuals, be immigrants or be whoever, right? Anybody could
Uh-huh.
join these. But these trainings really are done by our program coordinator, who is amazing. And they train about the constitutional rights. So it's just,
Mhm.
in the previous administration, in an era where the rates were really high, there are still deportations happening, but in the previous administration, there was a lot of like raids at jobs and stuff like
Mhm.
that. So we started to do a lot of those know your rights that focus on federal immigration enforcement, so ICE.
Mhm.
It's basically like you have a right to not let anybody enter your home without a warrant,
Yeah.
search your vehicle, stuff like that. So that has turned to be very good for people.
Mhm.
Um, Last year there was a Kansas bill that was made into law, HB
Mhm.
2350, that created a
Yes.
lot of confusion within our community. And we did a lot of Know Your Rights here in Wyandotte County, but also across the state of Kansas. So informing people about the realities about this law. And we partnered with attorneys, and so it was awesome. And then we have our Immigration 101 program. Um, this program is for immigrant serving organizations or schools or um, anybody that wants to learn the basics of immigration. Like for example, there's a difference between asylum seekers and refugees, right? As far as a
Mhm.
process.
Yes.
Um, we go through all of that, and those are done and led by board members. Our immigration attorney who's on the board is also amazing. So we have that. And our third one is the accompaniment program. We have this network of support within our community. We train individuals of like the basics of immigration, and we have people call us from when they arrive here to Kansas City. Who knows where they get our number? Either it's from a social worker at a school or the police department or whomever. They
Mhm.
call us
Okay.
needing help because they want to know what their immigration papers mean, or um, they just got paroled into the country, so they have to check in with ICE. So we partner them with a volunteer so they can drive them there. And
Mhm.
sometimes a volunteer interprets for them too.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, this accompaniment program has grown to be a bigger thing where people even call us because they need housing or they're being kicked out of their home because their friend can't support them anymore. And so
Mhm.
we have a big group of people who are really supportive and resourceful that can either donate some money so we can put them in a hotel or whatever it may be. But it's really that program is a support for people. And then we do advocacy, both in Kansas and Missouri. We're part of the Missouri Immigration Policy Coalition that's working mainly on the tuition access. So in Missouri, if you are undocumented or even a DACA recipient, but undocumented people have to pay 3 times the rates, international rates for tuition. Not even out of state, it's international, which is a lot more. Um,
Wow.
so we're
Mm.
working, to change that. It's been a long time, but I think we're doing a lot of like community education and bringing out awareness so then we can take action together. So we do a lot of organizing after the education.
Mhm. I think the first time I met you was during the self and welcoming event that was at the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, and the commissioners passed it here in Wyandotte County. I remember the huge turnout
Yeah.
from the Latina community. And
Mhm.
I remember all of the speakers that came to the mic in view of being advocates for both your organization and for those who needed that support. Do you want to share anything about that safe and welcoming piece that you all did at AIR?
Yes, yes. Man, so a lot of people, organizers, I would want to say, anything that's done locally, at the state level, or even nationally, just like DACA, things are not just done by elected officials out of the goodness of their heart. It's like organizers in the back really educating and organizing people to be able to push for something. And that was what Safe and Welcoming was. I volunteered as just a regular volunteer person
Uh-huh.
in the Safe and Welcoming campaign in 2018. And it had been active for 2 years already. We did a lot of door knocking. So the Safe and Welcoming ordinance that we were trying to push in
Yeah.
Wyandotte County was the municipal ID. That ordinance included a municipal ID being issued by a third party and
Yes.
an ICE noncompliance that said the police department cannot work with ICE just because they want to, only for certain reasons.
Yes.
So in February of 2022, the commissioners passed this ordinance, and that night, the organizers brought like over 100 people to the commissioners meeting to watch this vote.
Yes.
We didn't know how they were going to vote, honestly. We were wanting to know, but the commissioners wouldn't tell us. So we did what we do best as organizers is really turned around, went to go knock on doors and asked their constituents to push on the commissioners to vote yes. And that's
Yes.
what happened. It passed and we were so happy. It was the personally as professionally as a person myself, that was like the first policy ever that as an organizer that you
Mhm.
know, that I participated in and I won, right? It's like
Uh-huh.
a win for me because I worked so hard. It's a win for me because my family in Wyandotte County would benefit from this.
Yeah.
Um, so it was amazing. And then 10 days later, we got shut down by the attorney general, by the
Yes.
Kansas legislature.
Yeah.
And they really, sorry, I was turning my light on because I was in the dark. um, but what they did was preempted half of our ordinance. Only half though, because the ICE non-compliance piece, which said that no municipality can prohibit working with ICE. But we were still left with the IDs, which is amazing, right? People need IDs. We were
Right.
talking about unhoused individuals, elderly people. We had even testimony from people that are elderly and were lost their birth certificate or even were even born in homes or they
Oh,
just didn't know and
yeah.
they can't get a state ID.
Right.
Children being aging out of the foster system also need IDs.
Yes.
Immigrants, right? Undocumented immigrants. I mean, they can't get licenses here and they just need some document that identifies them that they
Mhm.
are who they are.
Right.
And we were talking about like enrolling kids in school. We were talking about doctor's office, picking up prescriptions, the basic things. And
Right.
at the state level, they were thinking that undocumented immigrants wanted this thing to vote, this
Mhm.
ID, which is, totally not what we wanted.
Mhm.
And immigrants know they can't vote unless they're a citizen. So,
Right. Yes.
um, yeah, and we're still having the IDs are still not released. The ordinance was
Okay.
passed. It was after the Kansas legislatures preempted half of our ordinance. Wyandotte
Mhm.
County commissioners came back and re-voted on an amended ordinance.
Okay.
Um, so that's what happened, and we're still working. We're still working on getting pushing to get those IDs released.
Okay. Now you mentioned you were a volunteer, so you went door to door as a community organizer with AIR. But now what is your position?
Yeah, I was actually on the board of there before I got hired here. So I volunteered on my own time to do this canvassing. And in 2020, September 2020, or August, I would say, this position opened up and people were like asking me if I was going to apply or not. And I decided to apply and I got it. And so now I'm the executive director here at AIR.
Well, well, well. Wow. So you went from the board to being a volunteer to now the executive director of AIR. Well, congratulations to you.
Thank
And
you.
so you have worked very hard with a variety of different families needing a variety of different services, but you hung in there all this time. And what is your greatest um success story uh, being with AIR?
Yes. My goal at AIR, I think AIR is very unique in this in Kansas City metro area. We do a lot of advocacy for immigrant benefiting policies, right? Policies that benefit immigrants. Um,
Mm-hmm.
just a when was it? In February of this year, on the Kansas City, Missouri side, we partnered with KC Tenants to win an Office of
Oh,
Language Access.
yes.
So um but my biggest success, I think, here being at AIR is growing the organization in ways that, so we had really mature programs, amazing organization that I
Uh-huh.
love so much. So my goal was really to grow it, to grow the budget and to make sure we define our programs in a way where people know what we do, you know? So, and I have so far, it's like the organization has raised a lot of money
Uh-huh.
and we're talking about like I think when I started, I don't think I know, we were under $100,000 in a budget and now we're like $300,000, right? So
Wow.
that I feel like that's the biggest success in having the organization be a good employer for people,
Yeah.
establishing policies for employees. So I'm just talking about like the procedures that sound kind of boring, but really we really needed AIR to have to not have turnover and have people stay, right?
Yeah.
Making sure
Yes.
that this job is great for people so we
Right.
can continue doing our good work, right?
Mhm.
Volunteers are amazing. They are
Right.
amazing, but a
Mhm.
lot of them have jobs.
Right. Yep.
So we really needed staff to really work on our programs, expand our reach for further out than Wyandotte County,
Mhm.
being able to get our name out there so people know that these resources exist. And if we don't have the resource, we will always like send them to somewhere that do, right?
Mhm.
Um, we refer a lot of people to El Centro. That organization is amazing. They do
Yes.
great work. But yeah, I
Yes.
think the biggest success is growing the organization in ways that we could be sustainable for the future. And I would say,
Mhm.
safe and welcoming was a big success. Although the
Yes.
IDs have not been issued yet,
Mhm.
because the UG has to release the RFP, but we won, right? We got the
Right.
community, we did the
Right.
community work,
Mhm.
and we got the community to push on their commissioner to vote yes. So
Yes.
I think that is has been the big success as me as being an employee of there and being really committed in the work that we do.
Yeah. Um, so have you had many cases uh, where there's been domestic violence or any other injustices to these families that are needing help?
Yes, we have. Actually, there have been many cases of different themes. So yes,
Okay.
domestic violence, but I think now what we're seeing is um, family members living with each other. So we have, for example, a person who's been here for a long time, an immigrant who immigrated 20 years, 30 years. And
Uh-huh.
then we have a family member who comes and migrates here seeks asylum, whatever it may be, and they live together. And somehow or some way, there's like abuse of like financial abuse or other types of abuse within the
Oh,
families,
yeah.
and they're being
Yeah.
kicked out of their homes or the place that they live,
Yeah.
and they're finding themselves not having anywhere to live. So I think right now, what we're, at least in the community, immigrants who reach out to us, it's not having a place to live because their
Wow.
current person doesn't want them to live with them anymore.
Yeah. Wow, that's
Mhm.
hard. Is really, really hard. And with affordable housing uh, just about non-existent here, not
Yeah.
only here in Wyandotte County, but metro-wide, it's just so very, very difficult to get housing. I appreciated what you said about you all have a lot of potential funders or grantors that will help put these families in hotels at least for a while.
Yes.
And even that's hard. It's hard for families to, but at least, they got somewhere to lay their head at night. And they still working and everything. They just had to find a new place to live. You mentioned also getting IDs for those aging out of foster care. Do you have many in your community that are aging out of foster care at all?
No, not in our community. The
Okay,
As far as the immigrant community that's in contact with us, no.
okay,
Um, yeah, we have not. There is a shelter for young, um, how do they call them? Immigrants who don't have like parents, like
yeah,
children.
uh-huh,
And I wouldn't call that foster care, but really they're being
hmm,
released from that shelter. And
unaccompanied youth,
yes,
uh-huh,
unaccompanied minors. And
yes,
one of our amazing organizations, I don't know if you know about them, but Asylum Clinic, they are a pro bono, low bono immigration clinic that really focuses on the unaccompanied minors cases. But, individually, you can't save everybody, right? That's why we have
right,
to work on policies that will
yes,
prevent these things from happening.
yeah, wow, okay, and if someone wants to donate to your organization or find out more information about AIR, where would they, what is the website information and email address?
Yeah, AIR with two R's, kc.org/donate is the place where people can donate there. And we really recommend people and encourage people to become monthly donors because grants are amazing and we appreciate all the foundations who do this good work. But the focus of foundations could change, right? We could be funded
Right.
for 5 years and then it could change
Yes.
in the next 10 years. So we really want people who love the work that we do, who are involved in whatever case, to become monthly donors so we can sustain the work forever, hopefully.
Well, that's good. Yeah. And sometimes foundations don't want to pay for operations. And usually whatever they pay for is very specific. So if you don't, just do specifically what they want you to do, then the 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 funding is very restrictive. So you're right. It's best for those who would like to donate to make a monthly donation of any amount that would definitely help AIR. Well, I certainly appreciate you sharing on tonight. What an amazing program AIR has been. About how many have you served over the last couple years?
So last year, I could bring up the our impact report actually. That
Okay.
let me share that with you because let's see here. Oh my God. So this year review that we prepared,
Uh-huh.
um, man, why can't I find it? Um, our Know Your Rights served about like 900 people is what I've memorized, right?
Oh my.
Um,
Wow.
I think the before the challenge for us was because we didn't have a lot of staff, we were just
Yeah.
doing the work, boots on the ground.
Yes.
And we weren't really like I I wouldn't call us experts, but we weren't really good at tracking the people that we
Yes.
served. We just did the work, right?
Right.
And throughout my time here at AIR, I've been trying to make sure that all of us as staff people
Yes.
are good at recording. But man, I need to have those numbers memorized. Um,
Well, that's okay. I just wanted
yeah.
our listening audience to kind of have an idea of the tremendous work that you're doing for so many people. We're right here in Wyandotte County, but Wyandotte County has over 50% of the student population is Latina or uh, and then the numbers just go down after that. African Americans, Caucasians, and then Islanders. So I just think the work that you all do is absolutely fascinating. How you're able to help individuals coming in, and what would you say? We've all seen on the news the tremendous number of individuals that continue to come to America, and we've seen some things that are not very positive that is being said. But what would you say, about the those coming into our country now?
Um, well, I would encourage people to really talk to the experts, right? I know the TV news will always bring out not very positive news about
Right.
me and our community, and I mean me as an immigrant, me as in
Uh-huh.
my community. Um, we're not what the news says about us. I would encourage them to fact check. A lot of people, Congress people, nationwide, federal Congress people are saying that they're coming here as unauthorized and they're crossing the border. But what people are doing is the right thing, right? Seeking asylum at the port of entry is the right way um,
Wow.
to come in.
Okay.
And I I'm not an attorney, but this is something you could really find on Google. Seeking asylum at the port of entry is the right way to come. Um,
Wow.
and they have to kind of like, this is why we offer our immigration 101s, right? We
Yes.
are very open to any questions because I think sometimes people just don't know.
Right.
Um, they don't know the complexity. The immigration law changes, I feel like yearly, monthly. It changes with every new administration. Um,
Mhm.
so I encourage people to like fact check themselves, fact check the news, and not just believe what's being said because it's not true. And you also want to check, not you, but like people want to
Yes.
check how hard it is to seek asylum or seek refugee because it's different. Asylum seekers and refugees are different. Um, how hard it is to seek refuge or seek asylum at the country where you're from, right? Um, you can't just like request asylum from Colombia, for example, or from Honduras or Guatemala, because it's very difficult to just go online and you can't do that. You have to come to the port of entry. Whereas
Wow.
being a refugee, right, you can I think seek refuge at the country that you're in. But even that takes a long time. The processing and stuff like that takes a long time. And I've heard stories of people just not making it, right? Like not making it because of the waiting time. So
Uh-huh.
I would encourage people to seek the facts. We're not the only experts, but really just talking to people, finding more information, and not believing what's on the news.
That is so good. I'm so glad you encouraged us to do some fact checking because sometimes I hear some things that are so negative, like Um, uh, it's just everybody's hoodlums and they're
Hmm.
coming over here and they're attacking our police and all that. And so those are the types of things that uh, we need to fact check
Yes.
because even if some were criminals, the majority, maybe, what would you say, 80 to 90% are not.
Right. I agree. There are bad apples everywhere, right?
Yeah, because we sure got them
And
here in America.
right, yeah. And we can't judge a whole community or a whole like all immigrants as
Yeah,
criminals, right? And
right.
but that's what we're painted to be all the time, and we're accused of bringing fentanyl to the United States. But
Yes,
I guess these Congress people don't realize that the real fentanyl dealers are doctors in the US. Big pharma, right?
right.
So yeah, it's very depressing and annoying and heartbreaking to hear at every election season, every time we're painted as criminals. And
Yes.
um yeah, it's terrible, but people should just, I think, like fact check themselves, look at the
Yes.
facts and really realize what the realities of it is and what people go through coming to the United States. Like we have people walking from Guatemala, Honduras, all the way to Mexico to seek asylum, and they go
And how
through
far is that?
um I don't know how many miles that is, but it's days and days. Um
Wow.
some
Days and
people walk, some people come on the bus. Um it's a terrible journey, and I don't think they would make that terrible journey just for nothing, right?
right,
They
right.
want to seek a better life.
Exactly.
Um so I have like a young mom who called us, and she just arrived from a country. I can't remember what it was. It was not in America. I can't
Uh-huh.
remember what country it was, but she was pregnant, right? And so
Mm,
I sometimes I think, man, if she must have had a really bad time in her home country to make that journey to the United
right.
States.
Yes.
So we're all humans. I think we need to care for one another regardless of where we come from.
Right.
And that's my hope for the world.
Yes. Well, what an amazing interview, Karla. Thank you so much for sharing. It has been very enlightening for me, and I'm sure our listening audience have learned some things they didn't know. Like you said, just before you even cross over into the US, people have traveled miles and miles and miles that have taken days and days to get to. And then others have had to pay an enormous amount of money just to be in DECA. That's $500 every 2 years. And then I've heard stories that there are some folks that charge you, when I say you, those coming over from Mexico, Colombia, and other areas, they are charging an enormous amount of money. And then often those are the ones that take the money from the average immigrant before they get to America. And then when they get here, they have nothing. They have no paperwork, they have nothing. And if it wasn't for organizations like you, uh, at AIRR, wow, what would they do? So, what a great work you are doing. I want to say thank you for your continued work. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for continuing to be an advocate for your people, because your
Thank you.
people are my people. We all just trying to live together here in
Yes.
America. That's what we're doing.
Thank you
So,
so much, Dr. Hill, for
all right.
having me, inviting me, and talking to me. And if everybody thought like you, this world would be a great place.
And like you. All right. Thank you. This is Shades and Justice podcast with your host, Dr. Evelyn Hill. And we were so honored to have Karla with us today from AIRR. And she's going to give us her website one more time, and then we will close the evening out.
Yes, it's www.air with two R's, kc.org. That's our website, and you can find out a lot about us in our website. And you can get
Okay,
involved as well, not just donate. You can get involved.
perfect. All right. Well, you have a great evening, and thank you again for an awesome interview. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Bye-bye. Hello, this is Dr. Evelyn Hill with Shades in Justice podcast. Hey, we're so excited you decided to stop by. Hey, you can catch us every Wednesday evening, 8:30 Central Standard Time or 9:30 Eastern Time. We want to see you right here at Positive Power Christian Radio. Again, this is Dr. Evelyn Hill with Shades and Justice podcast, a chance where you can hear about justice and injustices here in our country. Again, Dr. Evelyn Hill with Shades in Justice podcast.